Hello everyone, welcome back to Archangel RC and the second attempt of a From Courier Straight to Airborne video of an HEQ product. This time though, the Swan in question is not the K1 but the new Voyager. Free out of the courier's van and brought straight to the flying field to see if HEQ sent me the wrong parts again. Let's hope not. It comes in a box identical to the one the K1 comes in, although there are some improvements in this one, the most notable being the velcro pieces on the bottom of the battery bed so they don't fall off when you move the case around, and to further aid in that, there was a foam piece cut in the shape of the battery compartment to close it off and lay the plane on top. That is missing from the K1's case and it would have been so bloody useful there too. But anyway, let's move on with the overview of this one. First and foremost, I did notice things were packed a little differently in here. Most stuff was in bubble wrap, including the second set of propellers. Since the Voyager comes with a different radio system, antennas came packed separately and they even included two sets of antennas, some regular stick ones and a set of directional antennas, which I assume are the ones to use if gunning for the promised 8-kilometer range. Unlike the K1, here they have included a dedicated charger for the radio, but with the US plug, which is really weird since they know they are sending it to Europe. Not a big deal though, plenty of chargers around anyway. Now, I know there are supposed to be two batteries with the plane, one was stuck under the radio and in fact it turned out to be a Black Label one, battery, not whiskey. So as expected, the new planes are now coming with the new batteries that perform a bit better and have the Black Label on them. The other battery was in the battery bay of the Voyager. And so, we come to the radio, which turns out to be a SIYI MK15 unit, so I guess that is how they claim that 1080p video transmission at that distance. It is no longer the SkyDroid H12 system and it has detachable antennas so you can put on some seriously directional ones if you wish. The radio feels solid and very heavy, but it does boast a pretty large battery. Feels kinda nice in the hands though, not like a cheap toy. There is a full HDMI port, full-size USB port to connect something to it, an SD card port unlike the SkyDroid system, which means radio memory can be expanded, a USB-C charge port and a few other ports. Even has a tripod mount and a set of threaded inserts at the top on the back which would allow you to mount something securely to the radio should you need to. Pretty neat piece of gear. This is the first time I'm in contact with this radio and it looks pretty decent. It powers up by double pressing and holding the power button for a few seconds, just like a DJI remote. It is running some sort of Android device, but it seems to have been customized for this purpose. At least they left the Play Store on there, so downloading new apps would be very easy and might even be able to run the Android Mission Planner reliably, unlike the SkyDroid system. And finally there is the gimbal. Looks pretty decent actually, feels nice, moves freely on all three axes and let's hope it delivers what has been promised. Once powered, it does keep its position very well, there are no glitches or choppy movement when pushing it by hand. Reminds me of the FEIU gimbals right before they stopped making them, so basically it works good and smooth. It can also be pitched up and down and rotated left and right via the two wheels on top of the radio, though they are not very smooth and cause huge movements. I will need to look into the settings of the radio and see if those can have some expo dialed in to smooth them out a bit. Most of the nose piece assembly actually looks 3D printed and feels like it too, but perhaps the final version that would ship to customers would have injection molded noses. The micro SD card slot for the gimbal is housed under this cover, which was quite difficult to open the first time around, so it took some effort and a knife. Seems well made and even has a magnet to hold the cover on there. This time, luckily, the motor modules were the correct ones, so I am going to be able to fly it out of the box. I did try all the motors for proper and free rotation and also tried to move them around to see if they are loose in any way, but they felt solid in there. Let's hope there will be no more issues like with the incident. Things were looking good so far. I put in a 128GB micro SD card in the plane and then assembled it. Same as the K1, takes no time whatsoever, but also taped the wings front and back just in case. The tape is now an integral part of this plane's equipment wherever it goes. So, other than the gimbal and the radio and the shape of the nose piece, rest of the plane is pretty much the same as the K1. Same body, same flight controller, same firmware, same wings, motors and plastics, same batteries and shitty props, sadly. And speaking of batteries, I did charge the K1's batteries ahead of time, so I wouldn't have to wait for the ones that come with the Voyager to charge, which means we can get this show on the road immediately. Now, HEQ told me to actually power on the plane before I start the HEQ app on the remote, so that is what I did and all worked well and connected right away. Since this would be this plane's maiden flight, there are some calibrations to be done. First up is the compass calibration. As with the K1, just tap the button and follow the instructions. It is super simple. Just orient the plane as shown in the image and rotate it in the direction shown until the image gets the green border and says finished. Then move on to the next one. After that, make sure you calibrate the airspeed sensor as well. HEQ and the instructions both say to actually plug the hole with my finger for the first part of the calibration. I'm not sure that is the right way to do it, but I guess we will see soon enough. After all the calibrations are done, a restart of the plane is a good idea and it is now ready to fly. One thing that I noticed was that this one seems to lock onto satellites quicker than the K1 and also locks onto more satellites in flight. Not sure if there is just something wrong with the GPS in the K1 unit I have or if they've changed something for this model, but it is noticeable and better. Arming is done by holding the throttle stick down and to the right for a few seconds, prop will spool up, then just raise the throttle and the plane will jump into the air. Interestingly enough, immediately after that, it started leaning and going forward as if I'd given it the forward command, which I hadn't. And then I pulled back, didn't wait to see what it will do, but this was super weird. Its refusal to go into position hold mode, despite having more than enough satellites locked, was also a bit strange. I did try flipping the switch a few times, but it stayed in altitude hold mode, though on later flights it did go into position hold and did indeed hold position. In any way other than that, it sounds, hovers and behaves exactly like the K1, which shouldn't be surprising really. The big difference was indeed the quality of the image in the radio and the apparent lack of vibrations visible on the screen at least. But then that gimbal is in fact mounted on soft dampeners, so I would assume they are doing a good job of removing the majority of the vibrations. When looking at the recorded video from the camera though, every now and again in certain conditions you can see some slight shaking and vibrations showing up in the far left and right edges of the screen, but for the most part it looks pretty decent. Just try and imagine how good it will look if they actually used higher quality props that came balanced from the factory. Another issue that became apparent quite quickly was a stunning delay of 10 seconds in the video link. Just check this here for instance. I rotated the plane on the yaw axis a few times and then stopped, moved it to the side, but on my screen the rotation was still happening. It was so perplexing. I figured out that actually the screen capture app was causing the problem. When I pause or stop the recording, delay goes back to its usual 0.3-0.4 milliseconds regular, but with the app recording the delay would go up to around 10 seconds, which was absurd. The SkyDroid radio was definitely not suffering from any additional delay when the recording app was running, and supposedly this Android device looks more capable. I wonder why this is happening. In any case, I did fly for a while with the app recording, but mainly line of sight, so you can get an idea of this new app in action, but I did not record the rest of the flight because it really makes the plane unusable. I am open to ideas on this one, so please if you have them, share them in the comments below. Could be app settings, could be something else. But let's get back to the flight now. After playing around with the plane for a bit and it not falling out of the sky in hover mode, I finally gained some altitude and clicked the transition button and it did everything as expected. It transitioned to forward flight pretty smoothly. I flew around for a bit and then suddenly, out of nowhere, it did some weird dip with the throttle up, then a flip or two, and then goes into hover mode. I was surprised for sure, I did not expect that to happen, and on such a calm day too. So I clicked the transition button again, and it again transitioned to fixed wing, and literally 200 meters later, almost the same thing happened. Nose down suddenly, and then immediately transitioned to hover mode. And again, I pressed the transition button and it again went to fixed wing mode. I tried to fly more gently without using too much stick input for the turns for a while to see how it will fare, and from a certain point on it stopped doing these crazy dips and flips and flew normally. On following flights, it did this dip, flip and hover thing at least once per flight, usually at the start of it. During this event, for instance, I even had the camera rotated to the leftmost position where it actually can see the wing and the left side motors, and you can see the dip right before it transitioned to hover, which was really weird, and you can also see the sudden difference in motor RPM from the way the props look in the video. No idea what is going on, but at least it goes to hover and doesn't result in a crash, which I assume is further aided by the fact that the wings are now taped on and can't come off. Otherwise, with these violent maneuvers, I can see it crashing down often. I guess HEQ should send a roll of tape with every plane. I'm not sure why the plane does this. I have my theory that it might be due to the airspeed sensor and how it is calibrated. In other words, it might be a bad idea to completely plug the hole during calibration, but since I've never dealt with airspeed sensors before, I can't be certain. If any of you have any idea on this, I'd be glad to hear it. In any case, during these events, the plane suffered no damage, nor did the gimbal in fact, and I would like to commend whoever built it. It handled a lot of similar crap that day without complaining and with no resulting issues, which is admirable. Seems to work very well. Well, it does drift during turns, especially sharp ones, but that is nothing new. A lot of gimbals work that way, to be honest, outside of the DJI world, though it would have been nicer if it drifted in the direction of the turn to make the turn look more natural compared to drifting the other way and making it look all weird. Gentler turns definitely look better. Other than these issues, the plane flew well and the video over the radio link looked very stable and definitely much higher resolution compared to that from the K1. I wasn't really gunning for distance, but I did try to get out a bit a few times, and the video would freeze at just over 1 kilometer every time, but I'm not sure if that is the location, the antenna orientation on the radio or something else. I put on the stick antennas for the Maidens, so it could be that, so hopefully I will get more range with the directional antennas or perhaps in another location. However, I distinctly remember the SIYI HM30 system having a ton more range with the stick antennas. However, the air unit antennas were a lot bigger and were mounted in a much better way for range compared to where the antennas are stuffed on this plane. So I guess there might be room for improvement in this regard as well. During this day my time was rather limited, so I didn't have the time for an endurance test. We'll do that later on along with a proper range test after I've balanced the props, but in any case endurance should be roughly on par with the K1s. We'll try to push it past the 30% landing warning and see how much more above 40 minutes it will do, since HEQ claimed that at 30% the battery is far from empty, which the charger does confirm, so we will see. I did take the chance to chase the K1 around though, handed over its remote to my friend and chased after it with the Voyager, but the Voyager seems to fly just a tiny bit quicker than the K1 and we weren't able to do longer straight sections of flight, so it was a bit difficult to get closer. I then tried to chase his plane, but since that one had no altitude hold, it was all over the place and again not very easy to chase around. Last I handed over the Voyager's remote to my friend and chased after it with my DJI Air 2, and this time I got some nice and smooth shots unlike last time, so I'm quite happy. Perhaps I really should try to program a mission on the K1 or some other autopiloted plane of mine, have it fly long straights around and chase after it with the Voyager to get some more flight time with the plane and to get more comfortable and used to its controls. Should make for some nice aerial footage with this gimbal. The 4K recording from the gimbal is nothing to write home about at 30 megabits per second data rate, but it is stable compared to what you get from the K1 and does look decent and should be able to catch up to the quicker planes, which is something my DJI Air 2 struggles with. I wish somebody would sell these gimbals as a standalone unit so we can do DIY installations on other FPV planes. Now that would be really awesome. Would be really awesome if DJI did that actually as well. Might be pricier, but that would be an awesome product for planes and the resulting video would be stellar for the size. But even this gimbal would be nice to have as a standalone option. really works well, and I don't say this lightly. I remember the times when gimbals did everything else but work. So in some regards, the Voyager is a very nice upgrade to the K1, but there are obviously still some issues to be ironed out, and I do hope HEQ will listen, investigate, and do their best to address the issues and improve their products. Another issue that I found with this new app was that the telemetry data had a few seconds delay regardless of screen capture app working or not. The plane will transition to hover mode, and that will be reflected in the app with a few seconds delay. Same with altitude too. It is weird to have the telemetry have more lag than the HD video at 400 meters distance. But like I said, I hope HEQ will work on that and will improve things, and hopefully before they ship out the pre-order units from their Kickstarter campaign. Now, for those of you who are interested in the Voyager right now, despite its quirks at this time, your only option is to place a pre-order on Kickstarter. I will leave a link to the campaign in the video description below so you can check it out. I do hope somebody would give me some ideas on the airspeed sensor calibration, and I will make sure to balance props and motors, try the new airspeed sensor calibration, and also do range and endurance runs for the next video, so stay tuned. But until then, if you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking, sharing it, and subscribing. And if you really liked it and found it useful, you could also consider using the new super thanks option, now available on my videos, to show your support and appreciation. Using any of the affiliate links in the description below to purchase anything from those websites will also go a long way towards supporting this channel at no additional cost to you. Another way you can support me is Patreon. The link is also there, and due to popular demand, I've now also added a Buy Me a Coffee link right under it for those who prefer that method. I would like to express my eternal gratitude to all the people who have supported me so far in any way and will continue to do so. I wish you all successful FPV voyages, and I will see you next time.